The smell hit Daniel before the silence did. Burnt metal, melted plastic, and something sweeter underneath that he did not want to name. 3 days of fighting had left the southern ridge of Halden Prime looking like a broken jaw, full of crooked rocks and dead machines. He climbed over a tilted insect drone, its legs still twitching, and waved his squad forward. "Sweep wide," he said into his helmet mic. "Anything moves, you call it before you shoot it." Private Carl grunted somewhere to his left. Rhea, the squad medic, walked behind Daniel with her scanner held low. The little device beeped once every few seconds, picking up faint life signs from creatures too small or too broken to matter. Daniel did not feel like a hero today. His back hurt from sleeping on rocks, and his sister's birthday had passed 2 weeks ago without him remembering. War did that. He climbed up onto a slab of black stone and looked down into a shallow pit where a coalition tank had crashed nose first. The crew had crawled out and died 10 meters away, side by side, holding hands. Daniel looked at them for a long moment and then looked somewhere else. A noise stopped him. It was small, smaller than a cough, softer than a whisper. It came from under a heap of broken stone near the tank. Daniel held up a fist. His squad froze. "You hear that?" he whispered. Carl shook his head. Rhea nodded slowly. Daniel got down on his knees and crawled toward the stones. The noise came again, weaker this time. It sounded like a kitten drowning. He pulled away a flat rock, then another, and then his hand stopped in midair. A pair of silver eyes looked back at him from the dark. For one strange second, Daniel forgot the war. He forgot the dead crew, the smell, the sister, the years. He just looked at those eyes and they looked at him, and neither of them moved. It was a dragon, a real one, a small one. Daniel had seen pictures of Vayoran dragons in the Coalition briefing tablets, and he had once watched one fly past a transport window from a great distance, and that had been enough to make grown soldiers go quiet. But this one was tiny, hatchling-sized. Its body was no bigger than a large dog. Its scales were silver-white, smeared with dirt and red. One of its wings was bent the wrong way. A long cut ran along its side, deep enough to show meat. It was breathing, but only just. "Sarge," Rhea said behind him, her voice was tight. "Step back right now." "It is a baby," Daniel said. "It is a Vayoran baby," she said. "If the Empire finds out we even touched it, they will burn this whole planet flat. Step back." Carl came up beside her. "She is right, Sarge. Leave it. Mark the spot. Let command call the dragons. That is the rule." Daniel did not move. The hatchling tried to lift its head and could not. A small puff of smoke came out of its nose and faded. It made the kitten noise again, and this time Daniel understood the noise. He had made the same sound once, in a hospital chair, watching his sister fade out of the world while doctors stood around doing nothing. "No," Daniel said. "Sarge." "No," he said again, quieter. "Not this one, not today." He pulled the thermal cloak from his pack and laid it flat on the stones. Then, with hands that knew how to handle wounded humans but had never touched a dragon, he slid his palms under the hatchling's small body and lifted it. It was warmer than he expected. It weighed almost nothing. The hatchling did not fight him. It looked up at his face with those silver eyes and let out one small breath, and then its head dropped against his chest plate as if it had been holding on just long enough for someone to come. Rhea cursed under her breath. Carl turned his back, as if not seeing it would make it not real. Daniel wrapped the cloak around the small body and stood up. "This did not happen," he told them. "You did not see this. If anyone asks, the ridge was empty." "Sarge, this is suicide," Carl said. "Then it is my suicide," Daniel said. "Not yours. Walk in front of me." They walked. The trip back to base took 2 hours. Daniel kept the cloak close to his chest the whole way. Every few minutes he felt the small body shudder, and every time it shuddered he was sure it had died, and every time after a long moment it would breathe again. The thing was fighting. He could feel it fighting. He kept his voice low, almost under his breath. "Stay with me," he kept saying. "Stay, stay, stay." He did not even notice he was saying her name yet. The name slipped out somewhere near a broken supply truck when she let out the longest breath so far, and he was certain she was gone. "Lyra," he whispered. "Lyra, please." The hatchling breathed in again, just barely. By the time they reached the base perimeter, the sun was low and red, and Daniel's arms were shaking from holding her too tightly. He walked past the guards with his head down and the cloak hidden in plain sight against his chest plate. Nobody stopped him. Nobody ever stopped a sergeant who looked that tired. Inside his quarters, he laid the small silver body on his bunk. She was alive, still alive. Her chest moved up and down in slow, uncertain pulls. Daniel sat on the floor beside the bunk and put one hand near her, not touching, just close. She turned her head slightly and rested her small nose against his thumb. For the first time in 3 years, Daniel Hart cried. For the first 6 hours, Lyra did not move at all. Daniel kept a tin cup of water near her nose and watched her chest the way men watch the last coal of a dying fire. Every shallow breath was a small victory. Every pause was a small death. Rhea slipped into the quarters near midnight with a stolen med kit under her jacket. She did not knock. She closed the door, locked it, and stood there looking at the silver shape on the bunk as if she still hoped it was a trick of the light. "You realize what this is," she said. "I do. They scan the base every 3 days. They will scan tomorrow. Then we have 1 day." Rhea knelt down and opened her kit. Her hands were steady, but her jaw was tight. She did not look at Daniel while she worked. She cleaned the long gash along Lyra's side, used 3 layers of human biofoam, and bound the torn wing with surgical tape and a splint cut from a ration spoon. Lyra whined once during the wing work, a thin sound that hurt to listen to, and then she went silent again. "Her body chemistry is reading almost human," Rhea whispered. "That should not be possible. Vaoran blood is supposed to burn human equipment. Maybe she is too young to burn anything." "Maybe," Rhea wiped her forehead with the back of her wrist. "Or maybe she is letting the equipment work. Dragons are not just animals, Hart. They choose what they let happen to them." Daniel did not know what to say to that, so he said nothing. By dawn, Lyra had opened her eyes twice. By noon, she drank from the tin cup on her own. By evening, she had eaten a small lump of protein paste mixed with rehydration gel, and she had not stopped looking at Daniel since. On the second day, she crawled off the bunk. Daniel was at his small desk, faking a paperwork shift on his data slate so the duty officer would not come knocking, when he heard the soft scrape of claws on metal. He turned and saw Lyra limping toward him, her bandaged wing dragging slightly, her silver eyes fixed on his boots. She walked all the way across the floor and stopped at his feet. Then she sat down and looked up at him like a child waiting for a reason to live. Daniel reached down and put 2 fingers gently on the top of her head between the small horn buds. She closed her eyes. That was when he started talking to her. He did not plan it. The first words just came out. He told her about Halden Prime, about the war, about how the insectoid raiders had come from a dead system and nobody knew what they wanted. He told her that human soldiers were not bad people mostly, just tired ones. He told her about his sister, whose name had been Anna, who had loved silver things and would have loved her too. Lyra did not understand the words, but she understood the voice. She climbed slowly into his lap, curled up against his stomach and slept. On the 3rd night, she made a sound that was not a chirp. Daniel was lying on his bunk in the dark, half asleep, with Lyra tucked against his neck under the blanket. She had grown warmer in the last day, almost hot, and her breathing was finally deep and even. He was drifting off when he felt a small puff of breath against his ear, and then a soft, clumsy whisper. "FRRR." Daniel opened his eyes. "FRRR, FRRRE." He turned his head slowly. Lyra was looking at him from inches away, her silver eyes shining in the dim red of the nightlight. Her small mouth was working, trying to shape something her tongue did not know yet. FRRRE, end. Daniel stopped breathing. Friend, he whispered. Lyra tried again, slower. Friend. His hand came up and rested on her tiny back. He could feel her small heart beating fast under his palm. She had said it. She had heard him talking for 3 days, and she had picked the one word that mattered most. Yes, Daniel said. His voice was thick. Friend, you and me, friend. She pushed her head under his chin and made a quiet humming sound, almost a purr. Daniel did not sleep again that night. He just lay there and listened to her breathe, and tried to understand how a single soft word from a creature that was supposed to be his enemy had made him feel less alone than 3 years of human company. Outside, far away, the war went on. Inside the small dark room, something else had started. The next morning, Rhea came back. She looked tired. She had not slept either. There is news, she said. Bad news. I picked it up on the long-range monitor. Daniel sat up. Lyra sat up too on his shoulder, watching Rhea with bright eyes. Vayoran search fleet, Rhea said. 3 star systems away and closing. They are looking for something, a missing royal hatchling. They have not said the word missing yet, but every dragon ship in this arm of space is moving the same direction. Daniel looked at Lyra. Lyra looked back at him. Royal, he said quietly. Royal, Rhea repeated. Heart, that little thing on your shoulder is not just a baby dragon. She is the daughter of someone who is about to come looking for her, and when she comes, she is not going to ask polite questions. Lyra chirped softly and pressed her nose against Daniel's cheek. He closed his eyes. The war he was about to start, he thought, was going to be much bigger than the one outside. The sky over Halden Prime turned the wrong color first. Soldiers on the base watched it happen during morning rations. The blue went pale, then gold, then a strange shade of bronze that nobody had seen on any planet before. Some men laughed and called it a weather glitch. The older ones put their food down and reached for their helmets without being told. Daniel was in the mess hall when the alarm finally caught up. He felt it before he heard it, a low pressure in his chest, like something massive had entered the atmosphere far above. Then the base siren started screaming. He left his tray and ran. By the time he reached his quarters, Rhea was already there. She had her field bag packed and Lyra wrapped in a thick cargo blanket on the bunk. The hatchling was wide awake, her silver eyes huge, her small body trembling. She was not afraid for herself. She was reacting to something far above the clouds. They are here, Rhea said. How many? 1 scout so far, but the long-range board lit up like a holiday. 2 warships behind it, maybe 3. They will be in orbit by sundown. Daniel pulled his field kit from under the bunk. His hands moved on their own. Rations, water, his sidearm, 2 spare clips, the small medical pouch. He did not even think. The thinking part of him had stopped working the moment the sky changed color. A voice crackled over the base loudspeaker. All personnel stand by for full inspection. Vayoran diplomatic envoy approaching. Repeat. All personnel will surrender quarters to inspection teams. No exceptions. No exceptions. Rhea looked at him. Her face was white. They will scan every room, she said. Every locker, every soldier. They are not coming for a chat, Hart. They are coming for her. Lyra whimpered. She had understood the tone, even if not the words. She reached out one small claw toward Daniel and made a quiet, scared sound. Daniel went to her, picked her up gently, and held her against his chest the same way he had carried her off the battlefield. Her trembling slowed. Her head pressed into the hollow of his neck. I cannot give her to them, he said quietly. I know. Command will. I know. Then we leave. Rhea did not argue. She just nodded once and zipped her bag closed. The plan was bad. Daniel knew it was bad. The plan was to steal a short-range scout shuttle from Bay 4, take it up through the atmosphere before the Vayoran warships locked the planet down, and fly directly toward the incoming fleet. Not to run from them, toward them. To hand Lyra back himself, before the Coalition could give her up as a hostage chip, and before the dragons assumed she had been killed. It was the stupidest plan Daniel had ever made. It was also the only one that did not end with a planet burning. They moved through the back corridors of the base, hugging walls, ducking patrols. Daniel kept Lyra tucked under his coat. She stayed quiet. She seemed to understand silence now. She had picked up more than the word friend. She had picked up the shape of what was happening to her. Bay 4 was almost empty. 2 pilots were arguing near the main shuttle. The smaller scout craft on the far rack was unguarded, fueled and locked but not coded against him. Daniel still had his old maintenance access from his transport rotation last year. Small Mercedes. He cracked the hatch in 20 seconds. Rhea threw their bags in. Daniel set Lyra gently in the co-pilot seat, strapped her in with a half-tied harness, and dropped into the pilot chair. The pilots in the bay finally noticed. "Hey, who authorized that craft?" Daniel slammed the launch sequence. The Scout's engines coughed once, then roared. The bay shutters were still closing when he punched the boosters and the shuttle shot out into open sky. The base radio went off like a hornet's nest. "Unidentified vessel, return immediately. Return or be fired upon." Daniel ignored it. The shuttle climbed. The clouds tore open around them. The bronze sky turned to black, and then to the deep, endless black of orbit, and through that blackness Daniel saw the first Vayoran warship. It was enormous. Black hull. Gold lines burning along its sides like rivers of fire. It looked less like a ship and more like a living thing. 2 smaller cruisers floated beside it, and at the edge of his sensor screen, 3 more were coming in fast. Lyra sat up in her seat, her silver eyes locked on the warship. And then she began to glow. It was soft at first, a faint silver light under her scales. Then it grew. Her whole small body pulsed gently like a slow heartbeat, and Daniel felt a warmth on his side of the cabin that had nothing to do with the engines. "What is she doing?" Rhea whispered. "I think," Daniel said slowly, "she is telling them she is alive." The radio crackled. A voice came through. It was deep, calm, and old, and it was not speaking Galactic Standard at first. It was speaking in a long musical language full of low notes. Then it switched. "Human craft, you are carrying something that is ours. You will hold position. You will not move. You will not fire. Any of these 3 actions will end your species." Daniel let go of the controls. He raised both hands so the bridge cameras of the warship could see them clearly. "My name is Daniel Hart," he said into the open channel. "I have your child. She is alive. I am bringing her home." The radio went silent. The black warship's docking bay slowly opened. Heat washed over the shuttle as it slid into the dragon ship's open bay. Not engine heat, living heat, the kind that came off bodies the size of cities. Daniel powered down the engine slowly, hands raised the whole time. Through the front window he saw rows of Vayoran warriors lined up on either side of the landing platform, each one twice the height of a human, scales black with gold streaks down their backs. They held long curved blades that looked like polished moonlight. None of them moved. None of them blinked. The hatch hissed open. Cold dragon air poured in, dry and sharp and smelling of old stone. A tall warrior stepped forward. He spoke in a clipped, careful version of Galactic Standard. "Out slowly, hand seen." Daniel went first. Rhea followed. Daniel held Lyra in the curve of his arm, still wrapped in the blanket, her small head poking out. The warriors stiffened the moment they saw her. A low rumble passed down the line, not a roar, more like a held breath. The tall warrior looked at Lyra for one long moment. Something in his face changed, but he did not let it show fully. He turned without a word and walked. Daniel followed. The hallway was vast. Pillars went up so high Daniel could not see their tops. Carvings of long-dead dragons covered the walls, their stone eyes catching the light as he passed. Rhea walked close beside him, breathing through her mouth. "Heart," she whispered, "whatever happens in that throne room, do not bow too low, do not bow too high, do not lie, they smell lies." "I know. And do not let go of her." "I will not." The hall ended in two doors taller than houses. The doors opened on their own. Inside was a chamber so large that the far end was lost in mist. Dragon nobles lined both sides, dozens of them, each one a different color, each one watching with eyes that could have burned through stone. The floor was polished black glass. Daniel's footsteps sounded too loud. At the far end, on a raised platform of silver rock, sat the matriarch. She was bigger than anything Daniel had ever seen alive. Her scales were the same silver as Lyra's, but darker at the edges, lined with age and battle. Her wings were folded behind her like two great curtains. Her eyes, when they fixed on him, were the eyes of a mother who had been told for many days that her child was dead. Her name, the tall warrior announced, was Vela, High Matriarch of the Vayoran throne. Daniel walked forward until he was 30 paces from her. He stopped. He knelt on one knee but kept his head up, the way Rhea had told him. For a long moment, Vela did not speak. She just looked at the small bundle in his arms. Then she said one word, soft enough to crack the air. "Lyra." The hatchling's ears lifted. She turned her head slowly toward the throne, and her silver eyes went huge. Daniel set her gently down on the black glass floor. She wobbled. She took one step, then another. Then she lifted her bandaged wing, ran a few stumbling steps toward her mother and stopped. She turned around. She came back to Daniel. A wave of shocked sound went through the dragon nobles. One of them hissed something sharp in their own tongue. Another struck the floor with the butt of a spear. Lyra climbed up Daniel's leg and onto his shoulder. She wrapped her small tail around his neck and looked at her mother, but did not leave him. Vela's eyes narrowed. "Explain," she said. The word filled the chamber. Daniel took one slow breath. He thought about what Rhea had said about lies. He thought about the dead coalition tank crew holding hands. He thought about Anna in the hospital. He thought about the soft friend in the dark. He told the truth. He told her how the battlefield had smelled. He told her about the small cry under the stones. He told her that he had carried her child for 2 hours believing every breath would be the last. He told her about the biofoam, the splint cut from a ration spoon, the protein paste. He told her about the lullabies he did not even remember the words to. He did not ask for mercy. He did not ask for anything. He just told her what had happened. When he finished, the chamber was silent. One of the nobles, a huge dragon with a long scar across his snout, stepped forward. "Lies," the noble snarled. "A human does not save a Vayoran child for nothing. He wants leverage. He wants a treaty. He wants gold. Execute him." Other voices rose with him, 2 more, then 5. The chamber began to fill with calls for Daniel's death. Vela raised one claw. The chamber went silent again. She looked at Daniel for a very long time. Then she looked at Lyra on his shoulder, at the small silver tail wrapped around his neck. She looked at the bandage along Lyra's side. She looked at the way her daughter leaned into him without fear. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "My court calls for your blood, human." Daniel said nothing. "My court is loud," she went on, "but my court has not seen what I see. There is a thing only Vayoran eyes can see. A bond. A child does not return to a stranger by accident. She returns because she has chosen." The scarred noble bared his teeth. Vela ignored him. "You will not die today, Daniel Hart," she said, "but you will be tested. The flame of memory will judge what your words could not stand. Tomorrow you walk the trial of truth." Lyra tightened her tail around his neck. Daniel stood up. They gave Daniel a small stone room to wait in. No guards inside. No need. The door was made of a metal so heavy that even a dragon would have struggled to bend it. Rhea paced the room while Daniel sat on a low stone bench with Lyra asleep across his knees. The hatchling's bandages had been changed by a Vayoran healer, an old gray dragon who had said nothing, but had pressed 2 clawed fingers to Daniel's forehead before leaving. Daniel did not know what the gesture meant. He suspected it meant something close to good luck. "This flame," Rhea said, "what if it kills you for being human, not for lying, just for being human?" "Then it kills me." "That is not an answer. It is the only one I have." Rhea stopped packing and sat down heavily beside him. She looked at the sleeping hatchling, then at Daniel. There were tears at the corners of her eyes that she would not let fall. "You are a stupid man, Daniel Hart," she said. "I know. You are also the bravest one I have ever served with." "That is the same sentence." She almost laughed. In the morning, 2 warriors came for him. They did not chain him. They walked him through long halls down to a circular chamber carved deep inside the ship. The floor of the chamber was a wide ring of pale stone, and in the middle of the ring burned a fire that made no sense. It was blue at the edges and silver in the heart. It made no smoke. It made no heat that Daniel could feel from the door. It just hovered above the floor like a living thing, slow and curious. When Daniel looked at it, he had the strange feeling that it was looking back. The dragon nobles were already there, lining the walls. Vela sat on a stone throne carved into the far side of the chamber. Lyra sat next to her, small and silver, watching Daniel with worried eyes. A speaker stepped forward. He was an older dragon with white horns. "The flame of memory does not burn flesh," he said. "It burns lies. If your heart hides cruelty toward the child, the flame will eat you from the inside out. If your heart is clean, the flame will simply show. Walk in. Stand in the center. Do not move until it releases you." Daniel looked at Lyra. She made a soft sound and tried to climb down from the throne. Vela held her gently back with one claw. Daniel walked into the ring. The fire bent toward him before he even reached the center. It rose up and curled around him slowly, the way a curious animal sniffs a stranger. He felt nothing on his skin. He felt everything in his head. The chamber disappeared. He was 8 years old, sitting on the edge of a bed in a small hospital room, watching his sister Anna press a silver sticker onto the back of her hand because she had said silver things made her brave. He was 22, running across an open field as friends fell beside him, and the sound of his own breathing was louder than the guns. He was last week, kneeling in dust, lifting a small wounded body out of stones with shaking hands. The memories played in the air above the flame. The whole dragon court saw them. He could not stop them. He did not want to stop them. They saw him crying on the floor next to his bunk the first night. They saw him whispering, "Stay, stay, stay," through a thermal cloak. They saw him singing a half-remembered human song into the dark, while a small silver head rested under his chin. They saw the moment Lyra had said "friend," and they saw what his face had done when she said it. The flame pulled back slowly. It folded down into itself and shrank to the size of a candle. Then it bowed once, low, in Daniel's direction and went out. Silence. Vela stood up from her throne. The whole court stood with her. "In the long memory of the Vayoran," she said, and her voice was thick, "no human has ever passed the flame. None have tried. None have been worthy. This man did not pass because he is clever. He passed because he is clean." She walked down from the throne. The court parted. Lyra hopped down behind her and ran the rest of the way on her own, climbing up Daniel's leg and onto his shoulder, where she rubbed her head fiercely against his cheek. Vela stopped in front of him. She was so much larger than him that he had to tilt his head all the way back to meet her eyes. "From this day," she said, "you are not a stranger to the throne. You are Dragon Friend, the first of your kind to wear the name. Your blood is sacred under our sky. Any Vayoran who lifts a claw against you lifts it against me." Daniel could not find his voice. He bowed his head. That was when the wall exploded. A heavy slab of stone shot inward and crushed two nobles where they stood. Smoke and fire rolled into the chamber. Through the broken wall came warriors in black armor with red trim, their scales scratched dull, their eyes hot with something that was not loyalty. Black Talon, a noble screamed, "Traitors!" A dragon in black armor pointed straight at Lyra. "Take the air," he roared. "Burn the matriarch." Vela's body coiled like a storm gathering. Daniel grabbed a fallen blade from the floor, set Lyra behind his back, and stepped up beside the matriarch. Rhea appeared at his shoulder with a pistol drawn. The black-armored dragons charged. The first black warrior who came at Vela did not get within 10 paces of her. The matriarch moved faster than something her size had any right to move. One sweep of her tail broke his armor like glass. Her claws did the rest. But the Black Talon had not come with one warrior. They had come with 40. The chamber turned into a storm. Wings cracked stone. Fire poured down the walls in long, bright ribbons. Nobles fought beside Vela in twisting silver and gold bodies. Pillars came down. The air tasted of burned metal and something sweeter that Daniel knew from the battlefield and did not want to name again. He held his ground. He had set Lyra in a small alcove carved into the wall, the only safe place in reach, and he stood in front of it with the fallen blade in both hands. The blade was too big for human grip. He did not care. He swung it the way he swung a rifle stock, short, hard, mean. Rhea stood at his right with her pistol working fast. Every black-armored shape that came near them, she hit twice in the neck plates where the scales were thin. They held the alcove for one long minute. Then a black warrior taller than the others broke through the line and lunged straight for Lyra. Daniel did not think. He stepped in front of the claw. It went through the side of his chest plate as if the plate were paper. He felt the strike pull him off the ground for a moment, and then he was on the floor on his back, and the ceiling was very far away, and his ears were full of a high, strange sound he did not recognize. The high, strange sound was Lyra screaming. She came out of the alcove. She came past his shoulder. She landed on the chest of the black warrior who had struck him, no bigger than a dog, and she opened her small silver mouth and she screamed again. The sound was not a sound a hatchling should be able to make. It was a sound that did not stop inside the chamber. It went out. It went up through the hull of the warship. It went out through subspace, the way light goes through water, and it kept going. Across 3 star systems, every Vayoran warship felt that scream. Every Vayoran warship turned. In the chamber, the black warrior under Lyra began to burn, not from outside, from inside. He opened his mouth to roar and silver fire came out instead of sound. He collapsed in a heap of cooling ash. Lyra stood on the ash and screamed again, and the rest of the Black Talon nearest to her staggered as if hit by a wave. Vela rose to her full height and let out a roar of her own, deep and old, and the loyal nobles took heart and pressed forward. Rhea was on her knees beside Daniel, pressing both hands hard into his chest. Her voice was very far away. "Stay with me, stay, stay, stay." He almost laughed. Those were his words. Above them, far above the warship, the sky over Halden Prime was changing again. This time it was not bronze. It was full of shapes, hundreds of shapes, then thousands. Vayoran warships were dropping out of jump space all around the system, one after another, faster than the human coalition sensors could even count them. Dragon wings the size of cities unfolded in low orbit. The heavens above the small planet trembled with their fury. The Black Talon rebellion lasted less than an hour after that scream. Daniel did not see most of it. He was carried gently by 2 huge silver-scaled healers up through the corridors of the warship to a chamber filled with warm water and pale light. The healers worked on him for a long time. They used things he did not have names for. At one point he opened his eyes and Vela was there, leaning over him, and she was crying without any sound, the way mothers cry when they cannot let anyone see. "You will not die today, Daniel Hart," she said. "I forbid it." He did not die. When he was strong enough to sit up, 3 weeks later, Lyra was curled against his side, already bigger than when he had carried her out of the rubble. Her bandages were gone. Her wing was straight. She had grown almost half a meter while he slept, and her silver scales had begun to show streaks of gold along the back. She lifted her head when he stirred. "Friend," she said. Her voice was clearer now, almost like a child's. "Friend," Daniel said back. Rhea was there too, sitting cross-legged on a stool near the door, with dark circles under her eyes and a half-smile on her face that he had not seen in years. The treaty came 2 months later. It was signed in the same chamber where Daniel had walked the flame. The walls had been repaired, but the scorch marks were left on purpose as a reminder. Vela placed her seal first. She insisted on it. Daniel did not sign as a sergeant. He signed as the first human ambassador to the Dragon Throne. A year passed. On a quiet evening on Halden Prime, Daniel stood on a low cliff above the southern ridge, the same ridge where he had once climbed over a tilted drone and heard a small cry under stones. The sun was going down. The sky was clean. Lyra sat beside him, no longer a hatchling. Her head reached his shoulder now. Her wings were folded but huge. Above them, dragon warships and human cruisers drifted side by side across the orange sky. Daniel reached up and rested his hand on Lyra's silver neck. She leaned into him without a word.